Welcome to Peacebuilding Initiatives, where we explore the transformative power of dialogue, cross-cultural understanding, collective empathy, and building more peaceful and connected communities. I'm your host, José Barzola. Thank you for joining us today. On today's episode, we're doing part two with our good old friend, Pualani Enos, the owner of Kaulia Creates, LLC, where she brings together creators, leaders to address complex social challenges in ways that advance social justice and community well-being, all in harmony with Hawaii's rich and diverse ecosystem. She draws from systems thinking, design processes, impact networks, and social action research. Pualani grounds her work in Indigenous knowledge, practices to support leaders as they navigate change with wisdom and adaptability. She currently serves as a mediation apprentice at the West Hawaii Mediation Center in Kona on Hawaii Island. Uh, Mulani is also a lecturer at the Matanai Institute for Peace at the University of Hawaii at Manila, where she teaches Ike Kapuna Indigenous frameworks for peace building. Beyond the classroom, she collaborates with faculty across the country to develop community-based peace building research, scholarship, and educational models aimed at reducing complex conflict rooted in complex trauma. Today's conversation, we're going to explore the profound intersections of trauma healing, restorative practices, and how Indigenous frameworks can reshape the way communities understand conflict, nurture resilience, and cultivate peace. For folks who are listening to this for the first time or getting to learn about our special guest today. In the summary, I will put a link to our first conversation so you can catch up because we just had a very wonderful, lively conversation last time that we did not get to a couple things. And so we're back here for part two. So Kua, thank you so much for being here with us today. It is truly a
Thank you
joy.
for
I
having
appreciate your
me.
time. First off, shifting a little to some things I didn't ask last time, and as it relates to Kaulia Creates, LLC, just would love to learn about, what inspired the creation of your LLC and what does Kaulia mean in the context of your mission?
So it's so interesting, Jose, because I have come to Hawaii, as a 31-year-old. I did not have a lot of contact with my father, but even when I did, he was very resistant to talk about our family. And I never really understood why. And my mom would say, who is not Hawaiian, there are just a lot of painful memories. And I just, my whole life, my first part of my career was around trying to create um, empowering interventions for victims of violence and reaching out to the most marginalized of those people who are dealing with that, and communities of color, immigrants, refugees, people who same sex, transgender, and then I worked in child abuse a lot. And so I just kind of assumed it was like that kind of stuff. And he was a war veteran from Korea. But it turns out, actually, because you had asked me that question very directly when we were preparing for this, I went on a hunt and I've been searching and searching. And it turns out that my great 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 grandfather was an advocate for the queen and a spokesperson for like the equivalent like of an attorney at that point, for our queen when she was overthrown as part of the Aloha ʻāina movement, which was a resistance to the United States taking over. So it's my dad's mother, Mariah Kaulia, who was also a musician on Maui. So she, I assume, because I'm pretty sure that James Kaulia was imprisoned with all of the other people who were, that then she was, came to Maui and met my grandfather. But imagine that kind of trauma. And I remember sometimes, and it was when my dad was drinking, my sister told me the story. I do not remember the story. She said, if the United States hadn't taken over, like you would be among princesses. Like that would be who you would be with. And like, we just thought he was being, and to realize now who that person is. And it's funny, I didn't name my company this, but I just felt like my grandma never got kind of my Enos side of the family, there's a lot of Enoses. Some people say Enos, some people say Enos. There's a lot of those, right? And Kaulia is a little bit harder to say. So growing up, um, I had trouble saying it. And I have two siblings. I have a lot of siblings from different moms, and two of them got her name. And I think it's because my dad was married to both people at the same time. And so it was like a strategy. And I used to be so embarrassed about this, but I'm just gonna, it is what it is, right? And I love my siblings. I love them so much. I'm so grateful to them. So I think they often felt kind of like off because they had the Kaulia, not the Enos, but really I have to thank you because it was almost, and I do believe this, that when I could finally recognize that side of my family, more and more information started to come to me. And oh, I'm just forgetting her last name right now, but she's like the owner of a big corporation and she taught at UH for a really long time. So I got to look her up. But the funny story is, we were at a meeting and I was saying aloha ʻāina, meaning like an ag movement on Maui in 2014 and or 16. And she mentions aloha ʻāina. And what she meant was this whole movement, like, and the moment that we had this, like, she said, "What are you talking about finally?" And I said, and I don't think she would mind. I mean, I really love her to death for this because I think at first she thought I was resisting that thing, but then she was listening well enough. Because I'm often in the margins in this group that I'm talking about. And so then she's like, "What are you talking about?" And I said, "This thing on Maui, what are you talking about?" And she was like, "I am talking about the movement, the Kuwait petition." And even then I really didn't know what she was talking about. And I said, "You have to remember I didn't grow up here. And I haven't been to UH. And I hadn't even read Haunani K. Trask's book. And that was her teacher. So Pualani Enos to me is just one of my greatest sources. And but thank you for that, Jose, because I think it sometimes takes an outside person. I knew there was something special about my grandma and I wanted to give her tribute. And yeah, so that's why I named my company after her in hopes that I can have the same kind of courage. And I finally saw his face. James Kaulia, and I love some of the public documentaries about like the Navajis and yeah, I'm just so grateful. But to see his face was and there was only one picture I've ever seen of my grandmother. So this is her, I think it would have been her grandfather. Yeah. Yeah. So it kind of makes like in some ways I'm like, can I handle that kind of responsibility? And then on the other hand, like if I don't pick it up, who will, right? So
Yeah.
and the more I study it, I think that is what my business should be about. If it's not right now, is how can we bring back the way we once were one and the way we believed in a collective over the individual, and that we were about sustainability, sustaining ourselves so that we could have food and water and an earth that is healthy in future generations. So I really, with my business, I really choose people who believe in these values, or I try to. But that doesn't mean that sometimes people haven't said to me, like, "I just want you to help me do this thing," and that whole aloha, like, I don't really care about that. Like for me now, that misalignment, like I'm like, no, nope, nope. And I have choices. And I used to work with other people or for other people, and I had a lot of employees. I didn't have those kind of choices. So it is for me a kind of liberation. It's scary trying to charge people and those kind of things, but I try to channel them and like making them proud of what the kind of the how I do my work, because the what will kind of fall into place. I tend to get too focused in my career on the what. And yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for that. It's I did a little research on the word, and yeah, yeah, exactly. You know, referring to James Kau Kaulia, who's the president of the Ahahuia Aloha ʻāina, which is the Hawaiian Patriotic League. He fought to uphold the Hawaiian monarchy and prevent annexation, speaking at Eilani Palace back in 1897. So I love how, yeah, it's the name of your business, but there's such a deeper dive. I feel like we could have a whole conversation about just that name, because as I like went down the rabbit hole of like information, I also came into like, oh, the Hawaiian verb, it means the word itself, if you translate it from Hawaiian, refers to, and I don't know if you're aware of this, refers to like hang or suspend or hook, in the context of
Oh,
like crucify. And so
oh,
initially
okay.
I was thinking like, oh, is crucify, no, and once more, you know, on this podcast, we talk about perspective shifting. And so when we think about crucify, initially we might think like, oh, that's really like, you know, horrible. And then with like Easter just happening a couple weekends ago, you know, what's the other side of crucify though, as it relates to religion, as it relates to, you know, many times it's in reference to, not to bring so much religion into it, but as it relates to the origins of Easter, not the Easter bunny, but
Yeah.
Jesus Christ being crucified, it's a symbol of going against sin, doing what's right, even if it leads to crucifixion, right? Like it's a spiritual discipline. So I don't know. As I
You
like
know,
went down
I
this rabbit
just
hole,
learned
I
that
got this
about
like
Jesus
deeper.
Christ.
I'm getting like this deeper appreciation for your organization, and then the creates. You know, like what do we do? The
I
innovation, I
just learned
guess.
that. Hey, I went to church and I don't always go. My daughter usually takes me
It's like a
out. So
victory
I
over
just have,
sin by crucifixion.
but
Think of
before
it
I
that
move
way.
on to Jesus Christ, I just want to give a shout out to Malia
Yeah.
Ka'aihue. That's who it is. She's the founder and CEO of DTL Communications. And she's just, now she's one of my heroes because she took the patience, even though she had the privilege, right? Which many see as a right. You know, she was a Pualani Enos student. She took the time for someone like me who wasn't a part of that to just like set me straight. And I think I was just learning about Jesus in church. He was talking about this exact thing that you're mentioning. So I think nothing is by accident, but I think it's not like Jesus didn't know what would happen if he did the things that he did, but he stood up to power. He stood up to sin, which if we just call that, like we break it down to, you know, the right thing to do and you choose not to do it, or you know that's definitely not the right thing to, like that's a wrong thing and I'm going to do it anyway. Like I'm using power. I think that part of using power, that probably is a theme around the work I've done, is there was something about both my parents that they just really believed that every human should care about every other human, and that was their way of demonstrating aloha, their belief system around peace, I would say. And I've heard Norma Wong use that. When she used it, I was like, is my mom being channeled or my dad? Because they would always say, we are all important.
Yeah.
And however, it is so easy to get stuck in these mechanisms, right? Where there's an abuse of power from a group of people that are like the absolute right, not like the right, but like I am right. And it's easy to push back against that as an absolute right. But we learn from our kopuna and from
Yeah.
Jesus, no, we're not going to do that. If they're going to power over, we're going to supplicate. If
Yeah.
they're going to like hurt someone, we're not going to hurt them and we're going to stand up. And there's one passage in the Bible, I can't remember, but like all the Pharisees are the head of the people. So if we're just going to go as a story, like even if you don't believe in Christianity, if we just went with the story alone, but you know, they're all collecting money from all these poor people so they can do stuff with it, right, for themselves. And Jesus walks in and he like flips the table over. I don't know if you're familiar with this story,
I'm
but
not, but everything you're sharing right now, I'm relating it, building the bridge to like what's happening in this world right now. I'm like, taxes? Is that what you're talking about? Today we happen
you
to be
know, where
recording on the day tax days due.
and I heard a Hawaiian woman at one of the Ho'opono conferences that I went to recently on Maui. You were at the first AHA Ho'oponopono in Oahu. We were together, but
Yeah.
this was another one. And someone, no, this one was on Zoom with Manu Meyer. And this woman was like, from my kupuna, even if the whole room is saying one thing, if we know that our kupuna do not, like our sources telling us that's not right, our community was based on someone being willing to stand up and say, like, I don't know about that. Like, come on now, let's think. And I think that's what I help leaders to do. So I do a lot of private consultations, and typically it's with people usually call me when everything's really gone wrong. Like there are some, like everything's upside down.
You're like
No
a
one can make
fixer.
sense of it, right? So then everyone flees and they're like, don't want to touch that because it's scary. And I don't know why I'm good. Maybe I grew up in, I don't know. I don't know why it's, I definitely,
What I'm hearing
yeah.
is you're like Olivia Pope in Scandal. Is that what I'm hearing?
Like in a fixer, but I don't have any, I don't use political things. Like I
No,
try
no,
and
it's
go
okay.
and like reflect
You're
on
a community based Olivia
like
Pope. There you go.
what has gone wrong? Like, where
Yeah,
did we go
yeah,
astray? And it requires a lot of reflection and a lot of accountability, which not everyone, typically the people who caused it are like have gone, but not
right.
always. And so a lot of times, all of my clients, not great for my business marketing, but my clients are confidential because I was a lawyer. So I see every relationship as very private because no one wants
Yeah,
people to know like they're struggling.
right.
And it gives those clients so much. I really love working with them because I've worked with so many other places that have the resources, they have the power. And it's always rocked my brain a little because I always thought like if I had tons of money and I had tons of power, I could make the work right. I could do the right thing. But my sense is what happens in those power spaces is for so long you're not aligned that when you actually have that opportunity, you're kind of imprisoned by this is how we do and don't rock boats. And
Hmm.
I used to get upset with people, but now that I see they had a lot to lose. There was a lot at risk, and people aren't willing to really say we messed up. People are good at like you messed up, but they're not great at, and because it's painful whenever I have to come face to face with a mistake I've made. And I just, because I've worked so many different industries and places and done all of this hard work, it was one of my board members said to me once, you're going to be the best coach and you're going to be able to do anything because you've learned the hardest lessons. Like, I don't know anyone who's been through what you've been through. So I think that's it too, trying to take, like musicians do this, artists do this. They try to make out of something very painful, you know, do something with it so you can heal. And
Yeah.
I love working with people when they're kind of at that space of trying to ho'opono and figure out where did we go wrong? How can we make it right? I'm not good for people who just want to keep doing the same thing over and over, but call it practicing aloha or call it a different thing. Like I'm a bad fit for those kind of people.
And I think that's important to like know your limits for folks listening in, right? Like I think in any situation, it's always important to uh, where are your red flags? You know, what can you manage, what can you not? And I think that's really wonderful that you keep that confidentiality. You know, whether because that's really at the core. You know, how do you build trust if you're like marketing like, oh, look at all these amazing clients that I've had. Don't you want to be part of that group as
But I
well?
deal with
So
crisis when the has hit the fan. Yeah.
right,
And the crazy
right,
thing is that it's all word of mouth. I don't have, we were talking about this, how we don't have business
yeah,
cards. There's something about a business card that I feel like I can't manage and give people when someone
Right.
just gets my card, they really don't know what they're getting into. And I want to be
Yeah.
sure that people get, like, because it can be very painful to get to know yourself.
Yeah.
And it can be painful to see things. But if you can just get through that hard part,
Yeah.
right, then you can just, and I think that's the aspects of Ho'oponopono is we can only control our parts. And I think I used to always, my mom would always say, you can only control yourself. So you can just accept
Yeah.
others and love them the way they
Yeah.
are. Just manage yourself. And I think I got like, don't be a jerk, but I didn't get what forgiveness is. And that is what
Mm,
I've learned in these recent year and a half with Ho'oponopono
yeah.
and Ho'opono and Ho'omau that Auntie Lynette's been teaching with Manu Meyer and others is when you hold on to that debt that someone else has hurt you, it makes you sour and can make you
Mhm.
violent. And by violence, I don't mean like hitting violence. I mean, that was more my specialty, I would say. But really, the
Right.
truth is like the other kind of violence. And I was talking to someone today about someone I dearly love. And she had a really bad experience at one of the institutions. She had worked for them for so long, and then they had budget cuts, and they had changed a president, and then she was gone. And I really think not being able to work through that grief really marred kind of some of her later experiences that made her different than she would have been if she
Yeah.
could have not seen it like as a personal failure, but it was a systemic structural thing. And so that is a that I kind of moved into what grief is one holding on to, and then how can we kind of get out of the details of it and what was the impact of it, and then forgive ourselves, forgive the other person. I think forgiveness is a really big part of Hawaiian spirituality. Um, there's a lot of people that don't like to like say sorry. So if you wait for
Yeah.
them
Yeah.
and they don't want to come to terms, they'll
Yeah.
never think what they did is wrong. But if we can just remember, like they're paying a very different price for that.
Yeah.
And we don't want to be that way, you know. So the kind of mediation that I'm doing is really more one-on-one with each person so that they can meet themselves and manage it without me being an intermediary. We'll see if that works because I don't want to have to depend on like all the negotiations. And my experience is usually the two people that have this entanglement are not at the same place around it.
Mm,
I've done a lot of that work with families, with students, with schools,
yeah.
with healthcare, you know, all. But if you can just find one person and one person, and then I can help the person that I'm talking to have those conversations or go with them and then just kind of help. All you need is one person, I found. All you need is one person to make you not feel so
Yeah.
alone, to feel seen. But that takes like, we don't do that very often. We're also disconnected, at least from where I sit. Like everything is so disconnected. So I'm trying to figure out with some projects I'm working on in my business is how can we take the strengths of all of this social media, you know, the digital age, like de-weaponize it so that we're not being trapped in it and our attention is not taken away. But when we need it, we can make things more efficient and we can be on Zoom and we can watch a podcast. And we've talked about different mechanisms, like, and you do it,
Yeah.
you right? People, I can go watch any of your, should I call them podcasts? You know what I mean? Like all of your
Just
recordings,
conversations.
cultural, yeah, conversations,
Yes,
conversations.
there you
Yeah,
go.
that's really what they are. And then I'll learn something new and I'll see something and I'm just, and Leslie Wilcox was the same way. I just love that lady because like I can just go see my kupuna that died 20 years before I was born and I can see. So those are the gifts of technology. But I think what can happen is we talk a lot about our kids and we always focus on making our kids' lives better, but our kids are raised by parents and those parents have parents that are grandparents. And why we would leave, so I really specialize more around parents who have kids with medical issues, chronic medical issues, educational issues, and they need to engage with the healthcare system or medical. and that's hard on relationships. Um, or kupuna. So you had mentioned today this phrase I'd never heard, being a sandwich generation, where you're taking care of young kids and you're taking care of older kids. Because I had my kids so late, I did experience that. I never thought I would lose my mom before my kids were married and gone and out, and like never, like it just never crossed my mind, even though I don't know why it wouldn't cross my mind, but anyway. So I avoided it. I went to denial. And so now what I try to do is help people like me who are really close to their parents when that shift comes, where like my mom stopped being able to be my mom and I needed to be her caretaker. And that was a tough transition for her, right? When I took the car away, that's how she said, "You took my car away." And I was like, "I don't want you to kill someone." Like, you know, your legs don't work because of the cancer that the doctors would not admit she had or find, right? So it was just like this myth. So the last couple of years were so hard, and I feel like I could share, I can help others, even if they're not like me. Going through hospice can be challenging, but if your kupuna does not want to be dying in the hospital, like, right, or they've told you a million times, I don't want to be kept alive, if it's all artificial, it's a heavy thing
Yeah.
to make that decision in the face of 12 doctors. Like, we can give them a lot. You know?
Right.
So that's kind of where, yeah. So when you were asking about my business, I think there's not enough support, I will say this, for people who really love their parents, and their caretakers, but there's all these shifts, right? They're just, and the medical system that we have in America, I don't know. I've heard it's better in other places. Maybe it's not, but all I know is this one. Like, I have a lot of experience as a professional working in hospitals and emergency departments and that kind of thing. But when it's your own family, it is a whole different ballgame. Trying to
Yeah.
negotiate, all of those pieces. So
Right.
I think it's not so much about, my husband calls it, he's like, you're like a mix between a coach and an administrative assistant, because you're trying to find resources. So
Yeah.
basically, I'm like the pre lawyer, the pre like big thing that you have to manage. I
Yeah.
just kind of
Yeah.
help you get clarity around that.
Yeah,
Does
no,
that make
and
sense?
no, it does. And what I'm hearing is, I kind of joked about, the Olivia Pope of scandal, if people have heard that, or like a fixer. And it's specifically just because when emotions are heightened, when people are really being challenged, sometimes you don't have the clarity or the focus or the conditioning to be like, all right, let me go step by step. What do I need to do right now? Because as a human being, you need to go through your stages of grief or frustration or anger, whatever it may be. Um, and so it sounds like you and what you do with your work is a wonderful opportunity to have that, you know, leadership slash administrative assistant, as you call it, to be like, oh yeah, what do I need? And you just, what I'm hearing is, you break it down for them and as to what the next steps has to be. And I think, and I've never been a client of yours, but I've observed, and I think even with like nonprofit work, I see where uh, you come in and you're like, all right, let's assess how can we best move forward here. Because one thing I've learned is like, and for folks listening, yes, life is challenging. Yes, we've said this on this podcast a couple times of like, we are our own worst critic. And so sometimes we can't get beyond that. And so, but there is a community of folks. So who's part of your community that you can kind of bring in to help you along the process? And well, you're part of that community, and people rely and trust in, whether and it actually speaks, I think, amazing, like, you don't have a website, it's word of mouth. It's like, I'm sharing was work because I trust she was there when needed, assistance for what
Right.
I was challenged with. And that is better than any like Yelp review or, whatever folks put up online. because it's like you're hearing it directly from another source. So thank you for what you're doing and just creating that space, because we are challenged so many times with so many, just inundated by so much noise.
So
And
that's what I mean by
yeah,
complex trauma.
yeah,
Like typically, like your car breaks, your fridge breaks,
right.
like you find out there's no more funding for this. You realize
Yeah,
that's not going to happen. Like
yeah,
then your kid has a toothache. I mean, it just always seems to be. And what happens, I think, when you're a worker and you're used to, you can kind of just start trying to shut out the things. Well, I'll
right.
speak for myself. I would often be so focused on the food, the fish, the bird, the fire, whatever was going on outside of me, that I never gave myself a chance to take care of the things that were
Nourishing
really
you.
my
Yeah,
like my
yeah,
family, my friends, like, and I knew my mom was taking care of my kids, like my husband, like it's not that we didn't see each other, but I think there were certain things that it was easier to just work on these other things. And so I always tell my students that like, I am a cautionary tale. I am not like do what I did. I have learned from what could happen when you don't pay attention. And I think that complex trauma, so much of it is not necessary. And I used to try and kind of infiltrate systems, and we don't have to treat our employees that way, or we don't have to treat our bosses that way. They can be kind to each other. Like, I don't think people say, like, when I meet with them later, like that meant a lot to me and it helped me to realize, but I never like move the whole system. But it is such a pleasure now because now I just work one on one, and then I can
yeah.
connect people and they don't even know I'm connecting them because it's confidential. So that's really my dream. My vision is, what if we had a place where people cared about oneness, where they really cared about each other, and they had things to share because we heal. Like when I'm there for other people, there's someone I'm working with now. I mean, she helped me learn an Oli that I have not learned. I've known it, I've loved it, I hear it. I never even realized I actually do know it, and it's about protecting yourself. But every day since I started working with her a week ago, I've done it every day in the morning. And I think of her, and then she tells me of all her happy stories. So I think with all of our trauma informed work, and I've done it my whole life, all these things. I was talking to a young woman. She wanted to go get mental health help. And like all these scales that they're asking about, all the questionnaire, she's like, I was traumatized about 20 times. She's like, why am I, and it was such a transaction. And I do not blame the providers because I think it's because of billing and this and that and structure and accountability. But as we know, you can't regulate that kind of behavior. You just can't. And AI doesn't work for it, but neither does regulation. The more
Yeah.
rules you create, right? It's just like the stinkers are still not going to find a way around the rules. And the people who are really good are just going to find workarounds because the rules are silly. And it's just such a mess. And so I think that this work is going to help me get to a place like I am with you and a few other people, that we help each other in ways that if I went to a mental health provider, and not that I don't, because I do, but it's different. Like the time it would take for you to tell them, and all you have to do is say, you know what, I went through this. Or like you asked me about my business. You were the only person that has ever asked me, why did you name your business this? Like that is like a sense of caring and interest that I would argue is healing, because we're creating pilina, right? And I've never ever felt from you that you'll ask me a question if you really don't want to know the answer. And I think that also, so I think if we could find, like, I'm hoping, because I'm a good connector, I think. And it's better because when I connect people, then and I don't have to be part of the situation anymore. And that I think is a weird, well, it's not a very lucrative business model, I've been told. Like, you want people to become more dependent on you.
No,
However,
but the way
yeah,
so I think the business model
yeah. What do
of
you think
people
about that?
having I think the business model of someone having to like be in need of you is a very capitalistic mindset. Is It's a very like, it's like, oh, I need my monthly membership kind of thing. I need um but I think it's so I love everything you're doing because everything you're doing is very much in line with what I do. I don't actively advertise my business. It's Peacebuilding LLC. Although I call and people are always like, well, why isn't your podcast called Peace Build? I'm like, because I'm creating a space for beyond, just other conversations.
Yeah.
It's not about the LLC. I'm not monetizing, this podcast. It's more an opportunity to just kind of come together, have these conversations. But and it is word of mouth, very much like the services I provide. But I think, so shifting back to like, you don't, because it, going back to the healing, like, I find that it's weird to call it customers, partners, I'll call it. I like that word better. Or the relationships that I build with different community folks. It's like, yes, wonderful. You needed something, I provided that service. Here you go. But what I found over time is a couple of years from now, they circle back like, hey, we're doing this again, or we have some changes. We'd love to bring you back to help us to guide us through these conversations again. And this is like strategic planning sometimes, or if they bring me in as a mediator, or sometimes they're like, oh, a friend of mine from this other organization, this is the word of mouth, is looking for someone to do this. Is that something you've done? Like, you've never done it for us, but I'm like, yeah, I can do that. And so once more, and the way I also look at it is like, I find myself in like, whether it's my hand or my foot, like I've been very honored to have this opportunity to be in different spaces, different communities.
Right.
And
Right.
part of it is because
I
I
love that.
find that
And
I
it's
can do.
true. Sometimes it's your hands with origami.
Yeah,
Sometimes it's
yeah,
your foot when you're
yeah,
walking to whoever's
yeah.
place and walking
But
around.
right. And part of it's just because, like, the way I look at it is like, for me to be able to serve the community better, I need to understand what are the lens, what's the different perspectives out there. Just because I'm here in Oahu doesn't mean that, like, oh, I can, I understand how the rest of Hawaii. No, and so I'm very appreciative to you when you brought me in to collaborate with an organization in Maui, because now I get beyond that tourist lens, get understand like what is the life like for people actually, on Maui and on an everyday basis, or being able to step into the role of collaborating with a local high school here as part of another board that I'm on. A perspective I never would have had the opportunity to. So it's and then there's organizations in the Filipino community bring me in, and in Hawaiian community. And at the end of the day, I look at I can do my job better by all these different collaborations that I have, whether it's for pay or not for pay. I do volunteer my time a lot. I normally am like, okay, compartmentalize. I'm like, if I can make it work, I'm like, okay, it's only like 2 hours, 3 hours a week, this week, and then
I know.
maybe in like
And
three
you
weeks.
do,
That's
but I mean,
how
you are a
I
busy
rationalize
person.
it. No, but I mean, it's
Yeah.
at the end of the day, I'm like thinking, what are the choices that we make and how do we choose to spend our time?
So you know
Do
what? I'm
we,
gonna take that back. Yeah, you're not just being busy, but I'm also gonna say it's not because you don't have other things to do with your time, but you find a way to make time. So let me ask you this. So
yeah.
this is what if this is a collective, like a shared economy where we don't exchange money, right? And and people have jokes sometimes, and they'll be like, "Yeah, like, man upstairs happy with you. You have a big bank account." But I mean, on this earth, like I am rewarded when I share my gifts, and then I can enjoy yours. And true, it's not gonna pay my mortgage, so that's like I gotta figure that part out. But I think there's a way to make it work, and then we wouldn't be so dependent on commercialized packaged things, because I'm just trying to figure that out. Like, what is, so I did a very unique thing as I've applied to a couple things recently, and I've included my storytelling projects, which I didn't get paid for. but and some other research work that I did and papers I wrote that I wasn't
Yeah.
technically getting paid to do that work. I did it on my own time. But why is it less valuable? Because someone wasn't like the boss of me. So
No,
I put it
no.
in there.
Yeah.
And a couple of people have been like, take it out. It's not employment. You're going to confuse people. And I'm just like, it's very meaningful work. And I did it when I wasn't on work time. And
Right.
this is who I want to be. I want to kind of foster these kinds of things. It shows things that are important to me. And maybe that's good because then people won't hire me because they're like, all right, lady, like we don't, like after spending 4 decades of trying to please everyone and put myself in a pretzel, I think part of health is living in alignment and being with people who see you and love you anyway, or because of you, right? Not so when I say networks, I think sometimes people mistake what I mean, not like you work for this place, you do this, you could hook me up, I can ask for a favor. Not that I don't ask you for a favor. I mean, there's elements, but
Yeah.
it's because of who you are and
Right.
how you roll.
I think I love everything you're saying. I don't use the word networks ever because people just misconstrue it all the
Right.
time. They're like, or they see or listen to the things I'm involved in. They're like, oh, I would love to get connected to your network. And I'm like, I would actually pause. I would be like, well, I would ask why. And two, I'd be like, they're not networks. I'm like, they're
Right.
relationships.
Right.
Because it's not just that I have a way, I have an email and a direct phone number to get a hold of this person, but I can tell you, and if I I know personal things about this person's lived experience because of the conversations we've had, the time we spent together,
Mhm.
um, and I think that is a deeper dive into building these. As it's stated, creating a beloved community. It's truly about getting to know your neighbor, getting to know the people you interact with on an everyday basis. And then eventually at some point having that shorthand, that beautiful shorthand of like, oh, there's this new opportunity to collaborate. I know I'll reach out to so and so because I know they'd be the right person to co-facilitate something or go in on this project
Right. You
because
just save so
and
much
and
time for everyone, right? Because you
right,
get
as opposed to
out
like
like
let me put on and it's just because when it comes to going, I mean, I find for folks who have their own business, it's very much it's a very lonely experience. It's a very like let me talk to myself many times and see if this is the right thing to do. But if you do need to bring someone in, it's great to be like, oh, I know people that I have good chemistry with, and that I know that when I'm up there, I'm not concerned about what they're going to be doing because we're in sync. We're on the same page. And I think that just speaks millions of words that
and don't you
are
think there's nothing I used to think that if I wasn't for everyone, then that was not good. But I had a
mm,
colleague once and people have really shamed him for it. And it was the greatest gift because he said, I don't know you. I don't trust you. Like, I don't
I
want,
love
and I was like, thank you for just being honest. Like,
yeah.
because like now I know, right? I know. And it was, I think it's a boundary that now, and I remember there's an art of gathering, or I can't remember the exact name of the training, but it's a book actually.
Yeah.
Tihani, and I used to read it together, but she says like if you invite everyone, you might as well invite no one. Or it's like
Mm,
how Anna says about clothing. When you make something
yeah.
to fit everyone, it fits no one, right? Everyone has body shapes and and it was like such a gift to me. Like it's not that my body is warped, it's just that's not made for me. And what
Right.
if we could all just accept
Yeah.
like not everyone's cup of tea, and I could be your cup of tea for this moment. But if I'm working with you and then suddenly you change course and you want to do what everyone else is doing because that's what you got to do, it's just better to let me go because I don't do that. Like, and plus, you don't need me to do that. You can do that.
And the thing is like one should never expect themselves to be like perfect or an expert or very knowledgeable
Right.
in like everything. There's just no way to do that. But I think good leaders
Get
find
attached, like
people
investment bias.
like yeah,
Just,
like the way I look at leadership is like for people leading large organizations, like you bring people onto your team who can do what you can't, because then you can fully service whoever the customer, the community, the client may be. That's how you. It's like, why do you want five people that do the same thing and then they all have the same blind spot? No, you
And there's
know,
seasons, right? There's times when it's just like you've done your. When I left this organization after 12 years,
yeah.
people thought, I mean, there was a lot of social pushback, and people just couldn't understand. They're like, but now you're at the top and you know everyone. I'm like, my time is past. Like, I've done everything good. I know what to do. I need to bring in some fresh blood. And no one would believe me. They
And,
thought
and
there was
and that is the
scandal,
hardest thing
corruption,
to,
and like, hey,
yeah, and that is the hardest thing to be like, it's time for me to take a step back and see who is the next phase that can lead this organization, who and at the same time giving yourself the grace to like take care of yourself, that healing, that
I
like
was
as much
tired.
as
I
and
was,
that's the thing, as much as you may be in a job where the environment you're like, oh, this is amazing, this, when it comes to healing, you're healing from like some kind of trauma. There's going to be trauma, any experience in life, as much as however happy you think your job may be.
right.
And sometimes you're not aware of it until after you're not there anymore. And many times people become aware of it because when it becomes really serious, and that's when they step back. You know, whether you're like, oh, my health, or like, you know,
Right.
something's off with me, or you like lose it at work. But you know, I think we
Yeah,
all
I was
need
doing
time
all those
to
things in
heal.
that circle
Yeah,
and feeling that way. And it was just too many hard. I dealt with some very challenging things, and I felt like I did a lot of good work, but I just couldn't see how I could give. Like, my systems work wasn't like, I couldn't do the
yeah,
systems work and the other thing. And I got an opportunity to do that. And it was fabulous, even though it was very short lived. For me, it was a long time. It was during COVID. So it was like a long time, did some, um, but I think it is like, I really try, and it was hard. I felt so blessed to find this person, and she just did miraculous things. And it was interesting because my kids actually could benefit. My kids, we
mm,
like sacrificed a lot, and even my husband was like, "Wow, look what Chelsea's doing." And if you had asked him the first 10 years what I did, or my mom,
yeah,
no one. The only one that would say something is my youngest would be like, "She just goes places and talks and talks," and that's
yeah,
probably. But now I get to listen, listen, listen,
yes,
and I like to help leaders who are also kind of doing something differently that they've never done, or any person, like they're
right.
deciding, I gotta make a change because whatever choices I've made, they're just not working. And my mom used to always say to me, you can never judge something by how long it lasts. And that's typically like a breakup or something that you do not want, and I would just be like,
Yeah,
whatever, mom. But it's so true, because all you need is some time away. And then now I love those experiences, and even the hard ones, I can see the gifts. But when I was
yeah,
deep in at the
yeah.
end, forget about it. I was done.
And
And
it's actually some, whether you lose at something, you fail at something, whether you know your job ends, whatever the didn't go what you thought would be your way. I think one thing to not lose sight of is like there's a lesson to be learned there. Not necessarily one that you're not worth it, but one of like maybe this is your time to shift
right.
your what your energy, you know, all the good work you do to something more intentional that's in line. And because they say people go through like 4 or 5 careers in their lifetime. Rarely do you meet someone who's like, I've had this job for the, you know, until I retired. And you know, even as I was mentioning offline a little bit, you know, I went to this event where people were getting recognized for these amazing achievements to the community. And a lot of it was like something they did on the side. It was not their main job. It was what they had a passion
Isn't that
for,
a
what they
strange
figured was like, this
phenomena,
is the
right?
right thing to do.
Yeah.
And so that is what I'm passionate for. That is what I don't mind that I'm not clocking how much time I'm devoting to this, you
Right.
know, and I think that's kind of how I approach the podcast. It's like, I just love the opportunity of having folks come together to have a conversation because I hope for folks listening, I know that I many times will come out of a conversation, whether it's 30 minutes, whether it's 2 hours, with like, oh, that's a new perspective I didn't think about before. And how do all those little, so every time I do an episode, I'm like, how that shapes my mindset. And once more, we haven't really talked about this, but I know you do this and I do this. We weave. We're weaving things together. And whether people say it's connecting, the resources. I mean, the slogan for my business is building collaborative communities because that's
Mhm.
exactly, I realized that's how my brain works. As I have one
Right.
conversation with one person, I'm thinking about, I'm like, oh, you should talk to so and so, or like, do you know about this,
Oh
or
yeah,
like,
that's
what?
so you.
Because
Yes.
at the end of the day, it is going back to this concept of a beloved community is one that nurtures each other. I know the conversations, we haven't said the word indigenous, but I think many times what's embedded in indigenous knowledge is everything's interconnected. And
Exactly.
in this day and age, we compartmentalize. We're so neutral or nuclear mindset of like, oh no, this is here and that's that, as opposed to like, how does this all tie in together? And that's exactly what you're doing through the good
And
work.
what you just made me think of too is when I have those tight knots around me of the people who are my peeps and help me feel loved and see me and like, and that isn't always the same people, but it's been the same people for a while. I feel like when there's other parts of our net that are would normally jack me out and like I can see them in a different way. I can love them in a kind of distant way. And I can kind of let go of needing to control that part of the connections because I can't control that. Right. And I have enough of, so I think when we, in the weaving part, I think what is like, it's not an automatic weave. It's not always the same, you and I. Like, we're very, like, we have to see which thing we're picking to put in and the way we're wrapping. And it's not like a autopilot kind of thing, but it's very intuitive at the same time. And I think that's somewhat where we go wrong sometimes when we have these huge gatherings or these big meetings and it just the right people aren't there and you can't weave things that don't want to be woven and but I think you gave me the gift of helping me to start teach at not just teach at Matsunaga and it is I've had a lot of wonderful experiences but somehow I'm able to bring my teaching from when I was at the law school in Boston and that kind of one-on-one and but being able to build writers and speakers but mostly just thinkers that and not everyone wants the time to do that one-on-one but I really love helping people with their writing because for me that's a way to get communicate in many ways but also that stop and reflect and I think that's what you do too it's and when you need more time you'll say I'll think about it but it's so prized to be busy 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 and I used to be like that because I just didn't want to come to terms I think and I don't mean that's what other people do it's very just like intentional all of the things that draw our attention but I think that we can't connect and we can't hear ourselves unless we slow down and have does that make sense and it does help to
No,
have someone
no,
else like you're
most
saying.
definitely, because I think what many folks forget is, or sometimes we forget to acknowledge, it's just like, I just call it the noise. There's so much noise out there, whether it's the media, social platforms, whether it's, your interpersonal relationships, like just vehicles passing by. There's just a lot going on. And so being able to find a focus in all that can be challenging. And so I find that weaving also helps to like, for folks, for me, it helps to like kind of compartmentalize and not make it feels like if I were to like list things, it just seems like a big list. And so it can be overwhelming and stressful. But I'm
Mm.
like, oh, but it's interrelated. It's all
So
interrelated. And
true.
so it's all within just one umbrella of building a beloved community. That's really what it is at the end of the day. What kind of community do I want future generations to grow up in? And so think about the community that you live in. And if you really, for folks that are listening, like if you really love the space that you grew up in or that you're currently living in, think about like who were the kapuna, who are the elders, who was the community that devoted their time to build that community so you could have that experience. So
Right.
what are you doing, and what's your part in, passing that forward for future generations?
And I love that
It
you said that because that helps me sometimes when I'm like, okay, all these 8 humans with me right now are not going to be happy with me, but better you not happy me than them not happy with me.
No,
That
no,
you have,
most
okay?
definitely,
Like,
most
what's going to
definitely.
drive you? And it's so, but
And
I
and just to
recognize how
circle
hard
back
it
to,
is.
I know we talked about Jesus, which I never brought, like, Jesus into the conversation at one of these episodes, but um, whether you're religious or not, like, the way I look at the stories or the lessons that were brought there, or the, crucifixion of Christ, is like how what he sacrificed to create a better space for future generations. And so, and I look at what's happening, not to, there's so many things happening in our local
Say no more.
state,
Okay, yes,
nation, in the world,
exactly.
but
Mhm.
like, it's inspiring when during these challenging times, to say the least, to see how communities are stepping up. The
Right.
voices you normally wouldn't hear are stepping up to speak to, whether it's a protest, whether it's writing to or calling your legislature, your leaders to awaken of what's happening. Yeah, for some folks, it might seem like it's moving very slowly and more bad stuff is happening, but I'm very
I agree
thankful
with
and
you. I
hopeful
feel like
for.
the tide, we're starting to see like Stephen Colbert, yeah, that's his name.
Yep.
He hosted Dave Matthews, and there's a song that he
Oh,
sings called Blood in the Water. And oh my God, it is so like, because it's spoken from like the capitalists, taker, exploiter. I like your land is my land, like my land
mm,
now. And it's like so appropriate for this time. But I thought, I wonder if he wasn't getting fired, he would have made that choice because it's so like blatantly bold. But like, it just reminds me that, yeah, through music, through art, and I think the story that you told, that bringing up Jesus, even if you aren't Christian, I think there's some stories about Jesus that just like you don't have to believe in Hiaka to
yep.
understand that there's an Oli that she's asking for permission to cross a bridge. And I've done this Oli over and over again for Pula, but I would, when I was struggling with what was going on, wherever with myself or what I was engaging in, I couldn't say the last 2 lines. And that's where you're saying, like, please let me in. And there are stories where she isn't allowed to go in. And a kupuna that I just talked to, she's doing this whole like mo ma mo for Earth Day, but she explained to me, and then I got a book from Auntie Pualani Kanahale Kanaka Ole that where she like talks about the whole thing. But basically, when you aren't able to be invited to something, it was so she could kind of turn back and retrace her steps and figure
Mm.
out what was she missing, what didn't she. I mean, I'm sure there's a much more elaborate discussion,
Oh,
but what I took from it is when
yeah.
doors are being shut to me, I'm supposed to kind of go back and see what I haven't seen. And it totally works. I'm telling you, even if you do not believe in Hiaka, which
Yeah,
I
yeah.
do, right? Because she's about growth and healing. And I always thought,
Yeah,
like, so unfair. How come she doesn't get to cross? And like, then I
yeah.
feel like, I'm a good person. Why can't I, but like someone's telling you, like, not for you, not for, and like to tune into that because
It's
there
it.
is a
Oh,
consciousness,
that's
right?
so funny because when
Yeah.
as you're sharing about, why am I not invited to these circles? In my mindset, it's like, well, maybe I wasn't needed for that,
Right.
and because there's another path that I need to go on, and if I happen to circle back down the road in a couple of years, and I'll catch up with them then. That's been kind of my mindset with,
And
you
it's
know, c-
so easy to go back to what you know. I mean, I help people all over, my students, teach
yeah,
other people. I can help them move, transition like
yeah,
all day long. But for myself, I don't think I would lift this business that I am really enjoying or move to teach at Matsunaga if other doors hadn't shut for me, because I just could do those things. I knew them, and right. So yeah, there's something, but I think the auntie also said, but it's a lot of work. It's not,
Yes.
you know,
Yes. Yes, most
she's
definitely.
doing this amazing thing where she's applying the kaumaha and grief work and ho'oponopono and healing to AA and that healing process. And I don't even know the details and what part of the equations or witnessing. I'd never asked because I don't need to know. But like I thought, that's kind of what I'm doing with mediation, trying to figure out what parts of Hawaiian healing, what can I integrate with all the Western knowledge, because I do have a lot of Western knowledge, and luckily there's other people guiding that. But there's some parts where it feels like it's not working. But if Mary Kavana Pukui could do it with Dr. Harding, and people could, Auntie Malia could do it, and like there's got to be a way, right? And I think our queen did it. All of our elite worked with other people around the world. It wasn't just us, but it's not easy, right? I wish there
No,
was a
I
book, like a little.
yes. Well, I think so. So we get so this reminds me of, we have all these structures set in place to like guide us along. One of the biggest things every time I go into any new organization, they're like, "Ah, what's the terminology?" They're like, there has to be like a write up on like how to do this job.
Oh, like onboarding, like those
Yes,
kind of things.
yes, onboarding. There's another terminology, but
Oh
I'm
yeah.
always like, I get it. Like, I mean, I've stepped into places where like there's this 3-ring binder that has everything you need to know to like do this job. But then I've been into jobs where like there isn't that. There's some training, and then it's like, okay, we trust you. We trusted to hire you. That you're competent. And but even with like these, because many times these binders are, because you talk about this booklet, it's just very so it's how that person who wrote the booklet does their
Right.
job. And I'm not going to do it exactly the way they do it because their lived experience is not mine. And so I'm going to approach it differently. And so with that being said, I tend to adapt it. I'm like, okay, so some certain standard processes and
Right.
policies. Okay,
Right.
there's these deadlines I need to be aware of. Okay, I get that. But if it's like this specific email needs to be sent out, at this time, it's like, well, I want to make it my own. Like I'm one of the biggest things that stands out to me is like when I first started working here in Hawaii, I noticed everyone was like emails like aloha and mahalo this and initially I think for like a couple days I was like, okay, this is the practice, this is what the binder says, and I was doing that. But then after a while I was like, wait, these words have a deeper meaning than me just throwing it out there. I've only been here like a couple months. And so for anyone who gets my emails, and no one's ever like asked, but I always start out with like dear, which is like so formal.
So do
And
I.
and
I do
and then
too.
and
Or
then when
just
I
their
close
name.
out, I
Yeah.
the whole sincerely was just kind of weird, or like best is kind of weird to me. I think part of it's also like being an immigrant, and English is my second language, and so I came up with this like be well. So I
I
always ended
love
with like
it.
be well, and sometimes it's created a space for like conversation with folks, but it's also it's also how I close it out, and so it's just I felt more comfortable using that than like a Hawaiian word, which one I wasn't born here. I don't I'm not native Hawaiian, so just being conscientious of the space I'm in. And I had this conversation with someone the other day. I was like, even when in conversation on the phone and someone's like, oh, aloha is like goodbye, I unless I've known you for a while and there's like some kind of kinship there, I rarely would say it back because I don't know. I feel like it's too overused, unfortunately, and commercialized, and
Right. And I
yeah.
have the same kind of when I feel like people are just using it without, and I don't know if that's correct either, because I guess when I say like hola, ¿cómo está? And I'm trying to but that's with one person.
Yeah.
I wouldn't
No,
do it
but
like it's not the
I
same, right? But I have this
it's
because
not the
I say
same
take
because
care too. I
hola
take
just means
care. Yeah.
hello. Hola doesn't mean
Okay.
goodbye. Doesn't have I feel like aloha has like this like deeper meaning as
It
if you
does.
truly
It
dive
does.
deep and study it. And I mean
Right.
the fact that in various legislatures they're like, oh, we're gonna have the aloha spirit guide us, or like, so it's not just hello and goodbye, it's a larger meaning to that. And
Same with
so
ohana. People will use ohana a lot, and I'm
yeah,
like,
Lilo and Stitch kind of commercialized that,
yeah, and
unfortunately.
I'm just like, ooh, like because I think even in our ohana we have trouble like really being ohana. Like that is a
Mm.
heavy, like
It's
that
not
kind of
just it's
pipina.
not just the fact that you are family. There's practice and responsibility and respect
Yeah,
that comes along
wait.
with that. Yes.
Ideally, we would all be ohana. So like, so then I'm always
Yeah.
like kind of arguing with myself,
Yeah.
like, because I'm just like, should I say that? Should I? And it's funny because a lot of my Hawaiian students, or even people who grew up here, will say like, call me kumu, and I use Professor Enos like in my formal stuff, but when we're talking, I say just call me Pualani. Like, and there's this whole confusion because Vicky's in my email. It's just like I don't want to use my first name. It's like, but it's like I revere Kumu so much that I mean, but they're saying it out of respect, so
Yeah.
mm,
I
don't
I
correct them because that would be
yeah.
rude. But it's like I think it's such a heavy title, and I associate
Oh
it with
yeah.
other things
Yeah, yeah,
that
no.
I'm like,
You think about
I
your
don't know
own
if I'm there
kumu,
yet.
you're
Like,
like,
isn't
I'm
that
not.
funny?
It's well, another one is like uncle, right? Like it's not even the Hawaiian word, but here in Hawaii, people will call you auntie or uncle. And I know some folks get upset because they're like, I'm not that old. But even, and for me, it's more of like, oh, there's a deep like responsibility with that. Even
And
if we're
people call
even
me auntie,
yeah,
like, and they look like I remember myself being 30. It's a little
yeah,
jarring, but it's so endearing
yeah,
to
it
me
is.
because I
It
feel like they're
is.
trying to respect me. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And they're trying, or they're
Yes.
showing. And then I've had aunties call me auntie, and that is like the
That's like a
highest.
wake up call right there.
You know what it is? It's like a compliment because they're
Oh,
telling
oh
everyone in the
wow.
room, like
Yes. That's how they
everyone that
introduce
would,
you. Yeah,
yeah.
that's beautiful.
It took me so long to realize because she would say it to me when there weren't people around, but it was her way of saying,
Yeah.
like, you have earned my respect as a Hawaiian person and by the way you behave and what you do for our family. But I'll never forget it. And so now I'm less like, it's such a huge compliment. But even then I started thinking, do I deserve this? So my goal, my vision of all the work I do before I die is what if we all just felt good enough, right? That we all felt valuable and we didn't have those doubting Thomases. Our queen, there's this quote somewhere where she says, like, shame is just a waste of time. Like, move on. All of our kupuna, move on. Next. They all say it in different ways, but like,
Yeah.
and I love the mediation concept versus being a litigator for so long or an activist or a policy person. It feels like there's always like punishment and like we're all gonna like rattle out what all's happened for like ever instead of these things happened. We all
Mm,
make mistakes. Like, how can we just move forward? And Auntie Lynette calls it like without the hooky hooky. And we all know when we're doing it. When I'm like, no, and the other person's like, just drop the rope. Can we drop the rope? And it's more
right.
complicated then, but the hardest part is dropping the rope and just realizing like
Mm,
I'm the one holding on to this rope. As much as I
yeah.
think that person is in the wrong because the way they're jacking me around, but all I have to do is boop, right? And acknowledge how did we even get into this and who are we hurting besides us? Like that's why I'm just so fascinated by like all the line of Mary Kavana Pukui's healing work, which I believe is sourced by our queen and Auntie Malia Craver. And then there's a beautiful picture of Auntie Lynette and Uncle Ikeke when they were very young with Mary Kavana Pukui. Oh, it's in the on the Nana Ike Kumu Volume 1 version, like in
Yeah.
the Liliuokalani Trust website. Everyone should check it out because when I think of healing and trauma that I learned as a person, like in the last 50 years growing up, it's like always hard and sad and terrible and like bad. But they were healers and they were dealing with tough stuff, right? I mean, she had lived through the overthrow, Mary Kavena Pukui, but like they look so joyous. And I wish for us here in Hawaii that we could start to practice that in real all the time. Because if the world is looking to us, like Auntie Pilahi Paki said, that the world will sometime look to Hawaii for aloha, are we practitioners? Like, can we be good teachers?
Mm,
Right now,
yeah, yeah, no, of course.
I don't know. I mean, for myself, I practice every day and I have a lot of work to do. But I think even if we don't hit the mark every second, if we can be honest with ourselves and it's the effort, right? Is worth.
Yeah, no, I was just thinking, to be complete, like, I think if one were to be completely like, oh yeah, we're there, we can do this, that type of arrogancy in itself goes
Mhm.
against the whole concept of aloha.
That's true.
That the fact that you are continuously to work on it is, I think, more in line with aloha. And I'll be honest, like I have not studied aloha all that much, but it's been more of like a feeling, like
Mhm.
as you kind of connect not only with people but also the ʻāina. It's yeah, it's there's a humbleness to it. It can't be all knowing because then it contradicts the whole meaning of it to begin with.
Right.
That's the way I look at it.
And it's
Um,
for me, the ocean is that thing.
yeah,
It's so healing, paddling, surfing. And then on the other side of it, I always challenge myself, like, what am I doing to heal our oceans? Like, what do I do to clean up this
oh,
space? And oftentimes we're talking a lot about ʻāina, and it is true. All the things that are happening on the land are wet poisoning. But I just feel like as Mon and Nui people, like people who are connected by water rather than separated by it, I really wish that we could, because it is so healing, right? You have your he'e, those beautiful eight-legged animals that have many myths, like Maori myths, but also Hawaiian about the healing, and they're so smart, and but we're killing them. Like, our fish, our turtles, like I was just watching this thing on these guys who go out and they try and stop like poachers, people who are doing like fins off sharks and it's just when you watch it all together,
yeah,
and I'm not exactly how to go after that. Like, I
yeah,
don't know how to go after that system, but I know that there are people on Maui that I'm trying to work with. So I think, you were talking about restorative, I think is the word that you use. That to me, part of it is finding people who are working on similar things. Or I met an auntie, Napua, who works on Limu on Maui, and I'm going to hopefully get the chance to work with her. But I think it might just be at some point that we just got to do things and not know how, um, like planting new. I went to an
yeah,
event where I planted new, and everyone I told about it that wasn't going was just like, that's so weird. But of doing it and seeing all these people who are doing it, and then seeing the trees planted, and then having
yeah.
these protocols, it's meaningful. And then I found out later it was all in honor of our queen because I didn't
Yeah.
read the stuff before I just went. I'm kind of like that. I just kind of go do things and like make sense of it after.
It was the right thing to do to go. No, I appreciate that. You know, like,
But it just, but if you talked about it, I don't even know how they pulled that off because but most people
yeah,
would be like, what are you doing? That's silly. So I think part of it is also you get a feeling of what is correct and you follow it and you just kind of do it, even though it's like one step at a time, rather than seeing the plan and the objectives and the
yeah,
metrics and the outcomes.
yeah.
And that's a hard sell, I must say. So I think maybe that's why I can't get paid for things because there's no one to pay for that thing.
Right.
But maybe at some point it's all gonna come.
It'll circle back. Don't you worry.
Will, right? It will. And no matter what, I think I'm a happier, healthier, better person. So
Yeah.
maybe it isn't kind of a capitalist collective economy. It's we're all gonna get healthier.
Yeah.
And once we're
One thing you mentioned about ʻāina, and then you were distinguishing that in the water, just because. So I understand that ʻāina means literally it translates to land, but in other conversations I've been into, I've gotten the the perspective that ʻāina is all that nourishes you. So it's really like everything on this planet is ʻāina.
it is, and that is correct. So I
Okay.
think I'm thinking, how do we get people to I just notice that people like when they think of taking care of our ʻāina,
Yeah.
like kalo is
Mhm.
one, or like food that will feed us, literally feed us, versus this more kind of like, and I asked a couple people recently who are paddlers and surfers, and I said, do you think this is a fair statement to say? Because I knew we were going to have our talk, that there are a lot of people who spend a lot of time enjoying those waves and paddling, but how many of them ever take care of the ocean? And I feel so grateful to Sharon Ballydoy because she's my coach at Laivula, and she is like serious taking care. She caretakes, we take care of the shoreline. Like she is a part of what we do and how we do it. So I feel good, but like, do I make every Saturday? Nope. Like I'll go pick up trash and people make fun of me. Like if I were picking up shells to make jewelry, it would be cool. But then my husband has to tell them, she's actually picking up rubbish. And like people give me the worst stink eye. And like even the fisherman will give me a look. And I'm like, I think this is your fish wire, boo. Like, I don't know why you're making, but it's like shameful. And my dad used to do it in Compton. He would go pick up cans before like you could even get money for them. But he was just like, there's rubbish on
Mm.
the ground. Like, why would you leave it? And then when he could cash in, like I definitely get my gallon from it.
But I think it
But
just
like
goes
we're
back
like
to like,
rolling down Compton
yeah.
while everyone else is in their like cars, and he's like in his like tatas, and and I remember being mortified. Like this is, but now that's me with my kids. I'm like, yep, everyone pick up your whatever bunch of trash before you like go get in that ocean or do whatever you need to do. And then I do it when everyone's paddling and I'm not paddling. But now that I'm paddling, I'm like, all right, everyone. And I bring gloves and I bring trash can, like the trash bag now. I don't just like, because there's
Yeah.
gross stuff. But I feel like, I guess I mean more working, malama. So you're right, Jose. Thank you for pointing that out because that isn't, I meant like malama, moananui, like all the way out
Yeah.
to the gyre that exists. All I feel like we're like, yeah, there's a gyre, it's big, there's lots of plastic, but it's like, and I'll have people tell me, you know, that one thing, there's this one guy, he says, your one disposable thing that you use instead of plastics, that doesn't help. Or when you recycle plastic, it doesn't help because there's nowhere to put it. I'm like, well, I think I'm using less plastic. It's better than doing nothing, right? But
Right.
is it? So I don't know. It's a very
And
complex.
I think one thing that I would add to that also is, you know, it's not just the land, the water, it's also the people. I like to think it from that way, you know, how are
Yeah.
you nourishing that community? I mean, it's um
Yeah, like you see all the connections, right? Like they're
yeah,
pointing them out. Thank
it's all
you. Yeah.
interrelated. I mean, we just had the astronauts that just came back, right? And one of the big resonating perspectives was like from out there, and we've heard this for a couple times, but we
Mm.
need to keep reminded. There are no geographical borders when you're in space. There's not like, oh, this is where the United States ends, and this is where the next country begins. It's
There's
like,
no
no,
mine, mine, and mine.
it's just a collective of people living on this planet just trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
And sometimes we just make things more complicated than they need to be, as opposed to like the concept of like helping out your neighbor is not just like within your geographic, but like worldwide, like how
No,
I
exactly.
yeah, there was
Exactly.
some analysis I heard about like how much money would it be needed on an annual basis to like so that no person on this world would like go hungry on a daily basis. And it's not it's like I think 1/8 of the budget of like what the military or that a lot of countries spend on their military. It's just wild
No, I
how
think like who came up with that? Like instead of feeding people, we're gonna blow them up and poison our
well
land, and we're gonna
well
like
well
practice that and
it was
poison
this
our.
I mean when you put
Get
money
it?
into defense, the idea is that you're protecting your people from outside sources, right? But the perspective that I was listening to is like which made sense. It's like why don't we spend money proactively on protecting our people from the inside issues that can negatively impact them, like hunger. Let's
Right.
start out with that. Let's start out with housing, right? Let's there. If we have people that are taken care of, you're going to see if it's production that you're looking for, if you're looking for a better economy, because everyone can collectively collaborate together and be appreciative that they're being taken care of, and so they will take care of others moving forward. But we're not quite there yet. Yet.
I know. I think you actually have to believe that we have that capacity. And I think it would just take practice. We would just have to
Yeah.
reframe, and it's not impossible. And so when I hear people say that, like, you're in a dream world, you're so naive, that could never happen. I'm like, not yet, but it could happen. Like,
I mean, if we reflect upon like where we were as a nation or as human civilization, like 200, 300, even just 50 years ago, I'd like to think, we should be proud of what we've achieved. And so hopefully, if we look forward 25, 50, 100 years from now, hopefully those generations will be happy of what they've achieved. And if anything, be very critical of like, how did they live like that?
let's
How did
hope.
they,
There's got to be swing,
with
right?
that stuff? Right. So, right. So I would like to think that we are hopefully moving in the right direction and creating a space that will nourish all. And I'm hopeful that, we don't forget or lose the sight and the concept of indigenous knowledge and how important that is. Because like if we go back thousands of years back and we look at ancient civilizations, indigenous populations and like what they had achieved, it's like, oh wait, they achieved that without the modern resources of what we have today. Maybe there's something, and no one's asking the question of like, maybe there's something that we can learn from them as opposed to us thinking that we had to teach them stuff.
So that's why I named the class Ike Kupuna, even though it was, I can tell there's I get a lot of flack. And then when I say it's about peace building, people will tell me, man, your people were, fought. But basically the point is there was a time when people could dream, when people could love each other, when there was a lot that was happening. And so, people like Manu and Pulama Kaulia, they use that like K and then a parens like NEW for new. Like we do know, we just have to look back at those things. But I think it does require, I think we think our conveniences are so awesome, but whenever I've worked with kids or when I ask my students, like, I need you to completely unplug to do this activity. Like, you can't be checking other things and doing other things. And like the next time you're at a lunch with your friend, like, just ask them, can we just turn our phones off and just try it?
Yeah.
You'll be like hinky for a little, like, first 50 minutes. But when I worked with teenagers and I could enforce it and just take it for a whole day, I mean, they could just see this relief. Um, but that's when they weren't my kids and I was working in a place where I could just say like my rules or you can't come, right? And with my own kids, we just had a conversation the other day and they were looking at me like, and I just said, like, I need you to do a time journal this week of how much you're on that thing, whatever that electrical thing is, what's in your ear, and how you feel while you're doing it and how you feel after. So I think you grouchy, right? And during that whole time, what are you doing for our people? What are you doing for our culture? What are you doing for the tomorrow? What are you doing for outside? Just like I said, I need you to just ask yourself, right? And so I said, every weekend we're going to meet for a little bit. But I could tell they were just like, you're crazy. I mean, like they just, no,
Yeah.
one thing that one says to no one ever else has to listen to this. No one else's parents does this. And I'm sure that is not true, but probably not the way I do it. And I'm just like, I can't even get a hold of this with my own kids. Right. And I said, I apologize to you because I knew this was wrong. I knew it was wrong and I gave in because I couldn't face the pressure. And I think that's true for a lot of us. It's just like the push and like that's their social connection, that's how they do their homework, whatever. But I just said, you get what I mean. You're old enough now to have sense. Like use that thing in between here, but more importantly, here and here. Like, like because I said, if you're noticing that you're not tuned in and you're disconnecting, that is not for you, right? And
Yeah.
but I could just feel it was like on deaf ears. But I guess my mom said a lot of things to me that was like that eventually came back. Can I have faith in that, Jose? Tell me that. That it's gonna come back around. That they are listening somewhere.
Yeah, I like to think like maybe subconsciously it's there. It's there. I mean, I reflect upon my own like childhood, right? And like things that were said to me, things times that I didn't hear things or maybe, it's kind of humorous to look at generations, if you were to like I really love people watching to, get to know like the current generation and maybe the parents and then the grandparents and like and and learning about what were the points in time or the experiences that shaped people to do what they do, like whether it's the profession or the passions that they decided to pursue. um and yeah, I think, but even although people may not have similar careers generation wise, you start seeing like, oh, there's like special traditions. There's a special meal. There's a special way that we celebrate certain holidays, certain, protocols that we have that we pass on. And I think that's the beauty of it, of hopefully, you know, great grandkids are learning about some traditions that you're like, oh, that's really nice that they're, coming together for these gatherings, that certain dishes are at this table because maybe it's a recipe that's been passed down from your grandparents. And that's kind of how not only do we, and then there's stories being shared. So not only are we transcending time and sharing, in flavor and food, but also in the stories that nourishes us to that guide us forward. So yeah, so I do thank you so much for your time today, for just the additional time to
Thank
talk about
you. No,
EK
thank you for
knowledge
your
and grounding
brain, for your
presence.
heart.
Um,
It's so much fun to have these conversations. So thank you.
Yes, yes. And I imagine we'll have plenty more as time
Yeah.
goes on. But
And I'll be
thank you.
listening to your others too.
Yes, yes, yes. Thank you. And to our listeners, thank you for joining us in the space of
Yes.
learning and reflection. If you enjoyed today's episode, please, keep these conversations going. I hope this provides a lot of wonderful food for the soul for people to take back. And I know we jumped around different topics. And until next time, take care, be well, and continue practicing peace together, one person at a time. Thank you.
Care.